allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Call the meeting to order a little after 6:30. Approval of agenda, please.
So moved.
Second. Get those, Bonnie? Sure. Sounds good. Any additions, corrections, changes to the agenda?
We have one resignation that we could probably do under other business. But.
All right.
Yes.
Anything else?
I got an email from Sue Siglowski regarding superintendent evaluation, and I just want to talk to the evaluation committee to come up with a time to meet.
Okay. So we want to do that during the meeting, or you want to do that after the meeting?
Whatever you want.
Are we all? Yeah.
You're all here.
All right, they're all here. So we can do it under other. Any other? Others? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great, thank you. Approval of the minutes from September 16th.
So moved.
Second. Any questions, comments, updates?
At some point, shouldn't we, under the three of us that from Orwell, remove non-member district from the, because we're now a member?
Yep.
We feel the love.
Yes.
All right. All right. Anything else?
Just one, there's under the committee reports, page, I don't know, it's cut off, maybe 2, looks like. It says redo the just before the word child find, it says redo the document so there is not an idea that the document is misleading regarding.
It's a great sentence.
It is. I love the beginning of it.
It's the right before child find, right before Chris starts with child find. There's a sentence above that that just needs to be reworded to make sense. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstained.
Glenn abstained. Tara, yep. Great, thank you. All right, public comment? Hi. You guys are really far away. This is like a far away meeting. We need to make sure that we talk loudly if we need to across the tables. So it's a far away meeting. All right, thank you. Correspondence? Nothing? Nobody writes us letters or thank you. Okay. All right, I know. All right, committee reports. Policy committee just met. Tony.
Yes, we did. We reviewed A1, which is board member conflict of interest, and we decided that one's going to remain as is. That one's okay. A2, participation of board members. We're going to revisit that one. We're going to reword some things in that one. That deals with your pay if you miss so many board meetings, how it's going to get paid. We're going to reword that. And we are also going to reword A21, public participation at board meetings, to include adding the parameters for those meetings and how it's going to go. We also looked at our C35, our elementary middle school in-district transfer program, and I'm going to warn this tonight with an addition on number 11 to include in residency. Most of the transfers that are being asked for now have to do with people moving from one place to another, whereas in the beginning of the year they are just asking to stay somewhere or go somewhere else within. So I would like to warn that tonight, C35, that it will include the mid-year transfer will be primarily for residency.
Need a second?
Second.
One second. Any questions about that? All right, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Excellent. I just wanted to remind everybody that all policies are on the website. So if a parent or anybody comes up to you and asks about a policy, they are all on the website, so they can find them all there.
And before you go on, the policy committee is going to review most of our we're going to try to get through as many as we can. But our School Boards Association is writing a brand-new policy manual to come out this fall, which means we're going to have to make sure ours coincide with theirs.
So join policy.
So we had quite a few people tonight. It was
Yeah,
great.
it's exciting. So, all right, excellent. All right, extracurricular application request.
So, you had, I believe, there was one in your packet, and then there was a separate email with another extracurricular application request. So currently, the way our policy C23 and C22 read is if it's a new club to the school or a new extracurricular activity, it needs to come before the board for approval. We do have monies for both of these. You know, I think it's something the policy committee may relook at, that policy, but it's kind of a holdover for some of the individual boards. So Fairhaven Grade School and Castleton Village School is asking to sponsor a bicycle and mountain bike club. In there, it is within their budget allotment for stipends. And Castleton Elementary is asking to create this primary practice club, extracurricular activity for additional math, reading, spelling practice after school hours. So both of those are within our budget. So I would just ask for an approval on those, or if anybody has any questions.
So let's have a motion first. So a motion to approve.
Second.
Dave moved and Peter seconded. Any discussion or questions about these? Mike?
Question on the primary practice. Is this a club that we be practicing, it says extra practice math and reading or spelling in small groups? Is it above and beyond what they're learning in the classroom? Or is it doing what they're doing in the classroom already, but now they're getting a club together to do it more with a stipend involved?
It could be, can I talk? It could be either. It could be those students who need extended learning, or it could be those students who need additional support.
But it's by choice.
Correct. Oh, correct. Yes.
Okay. Patty, did you have a question?
Yes, I have a couple. So the Last Dirt Divas, that club, I appreciate that we have a budget for it for this year, for the 2019-2020. In 2020-21, they're asking for bus driver training, bike racks, etc. I'm wondering about that. Where would that money come from?
Deb and Kim,
Which one is that?
CVS and Fairhaven Grade School, Mountain Bike Club.
I saw it. I have not had dialogue about it. That was written by the CVS teacher that wanted to do the club. I can support from Fairhaven Grade School a stipend for the teacher, but in regards to any extended pieces,
Right.
I'm not familiar with that, and I'm not sure that we would be able to do that. We couldn't answer that with this budget in mind. That's next year's budget.
So I think I would just be recommending support of it for
For this
this
year
year,
only.
and then we'll,
Because do you see where I'm looking on the
Yeah, no,
proposal?
I
There's
know.
2 years
Yep.
there, so.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then my other question regarding this request is, so it's limited to Castleton and Fairhaven girls? So Benson or Orwell girls could not attend? Is that correct?
I mean,
I mean,
it's-
that's a question, I think, for any of our clubs that needs to be discussed and answered by this board. But right now, we are doing it within our school building.
those are where the two advisors are coming from. They're teachers in those two schools.
And it's 3:30 to 5. So
Right.
I'm not sure how kids from other schools would participate in it anyway. So,
And each building is allotted so much money to run clubs building-based, and that particular club, it just happened to be two teachers from two different buildings that decided they wanted to do it together. So the other buildings do have monies available, equal amounts of monies to host clubs if they have teachers or others that are interested.
So I would say there's not the same clubs happening in each building. I mean,
Right. It's really
it
based on
varies
student
based on
interest and
student,
need.
staff, interest and need.
Most
Yep.
of our clubs come from student interest, and then if we can find a staff member who's willing to support that, then we move forward.
Thank you.
yeah, I didn't get the sense that we're asking for additional funding beyond each year, but that's a good point. So,
I mean, that's what it says here, there's 3 years.
well, yeah,
So-
it doesn't say anything about funding anywhere, so I
Right.
just assumed. I'll just amend my motion to make sure that it's clear that it's approved, but subject to available funding.
Okay.
Is the third Divas for girls only?
Yeah.
Is there anything to preclude a student from another school who has their own transportation from participating?
Not at
No.
all.
Okay, so, I mean, I know that makes it a little hard and that's difficult, but I think transportation always is, but I'm just saying it doesn't preclude anybody from wanting to be part, okay.
We've always done that with
Yep.
all activities.
Yep, excellent.
That's what I'm asking.
Can I also ask a question about the primary practice? So, this is for first and second graders, is that how I read this? Mm-hmm. So once a week for 1 hour after school, they're going to do what they've done during the day, math, reading, and spelling?
It could be any academic area. I think they just put math, reading. and-
Sure, no, I understand that. I mean,
Yep.
obviously, that would be their major academic area at first and second grade, I would assume.
Yep.
I'm just curious. I'm curious why, I guess.
Just
I mean, we
because-
have programs, that are
Yep.
federally funded to
Yep.
help support these students during the school day. I'm curious as to what benefit there would be for those students.
Well, any additional support they can have, that students that need it, or extended learning. I mean, we love to say that we could get it all done during the day, but we have many students who aren't on an IEP and might not be on another plan that don't get as much as we would like to give them. I think we could all say that.
Sure, I understand that, and I think we could agree that probably every kid could benefit from an extended day, to some degree. Working with this population, I'm just curious as to how many are going to stay awake during that period of time in an effective environment.
Well, and it'll be brand new, so we'll see. I'm very anxious to see, actually, as their teachers are, I think. We haven't done it before, so we'll see.
Do you have a cap on the number of students?
We haven't really, we talked a little bit about that. We were thinking maybe 8, there's 2 teachers, so 4 and 4. And then we'll have to see, because if we get a larger number, we might do, 4 weeks of 8 kids and then go to 4 weeks of 8 other, like that. We talked a little bit about doing it that way too, just depending on what we get.
Do these students attend summer school?
We don't have summer school anymore.
We haven't had that for a couple years.
So this basically is like replacing summer school, to some degree.
I didn't really think of it that way, but I guess you could think of it that way.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yeah.
Well, so it's like a club, so any first or second grader can go to it.
Yeah.
So it's like, we've had math club in Oral before, we have tech club, we have different clubs. So it's basically just a club for first and second graders.
But it's a club with an academic
Well,
focus.
we had
Like
math
math
club
club is, it's a little bit different, in my estimation
Yeah,
anyway. I
you're
mean,
right,
if
it is
this
a
was a
little bit
math club, then,
But it's open to anybody.
sure.
Most clubs also, in my experience, are common interests or focuses which are done outside of what you would normally do in the course of a day.
Yeah, right.
This seems as though it's adding to the regular day, in a sense. Right?
That's how I feel, but, the other one is, when you compare clubs, this is a biking club and this is academics.
But I think the point of it is trying to help kids who don't qualify for tutoring get the extra help.
As long
Our
as their parents
kids that
sign
just
off
want to
for
read
it.
and spell after school.
So it may not help the right people.
And have transportation.
That's what the question's coming down to. Is
All right.
you're working on school work already. A little different than a regular club. So some kids may get help and some kids may not.
All right, I'm going to call the question. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. What are we saying aye to?
Opposed?
No?
This is to, so,
Yep.
I'm sorry, so,
We had a first and a second. We were in discussion.
right, I'm sorry, so, and you had amended it, David, for money, but I just wondered,
Well,
Could we
which one are
vote
we
on-
voting on?
could we vote on
At once.
them separately or not?
We can't vote on one and then the other?
Yeah, we can. I didn't know that was yes, so we can. We'd have to call a whole new question. We'd have to rescind that and start over.
I'm voting no on a different one.
All right.
Right. I don't like them both together.
So we need to, so I,
I'll withdraw the motion,
thank you.
and then I'll remove the bike club.
I have a second?
Second.
All right. Discussion on the bike club. Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. I have a motion for the primary practice.
I'll move the motion for the primary practice for CBS.
Okay, have a second?
Second.
Second. Any more discussion on primary practice? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay.
Raise your hand for nays, so Bonnie knows. How many are there? Four. Okay, motion carries. All right, let's see, transfer request.
So we can go into executive, we have two.
Oh, okay.
We have two transfer requests based on residency. Basically, they would like to stay in the districts that they're currently in. I don't know if you want to go into executive session and discuss those, or if somebody wants to make a motion to approve those. I did give
Yeah.
Tony the student ID
I'm ready
numbers.
to make a motion.
All right, I'll take a motion. Go for it.
I make a motion that student number 209227 remain in Fairhaven Grade School. Do we want to do them all together?
No, let's do them one at a time. Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any conversation? All in question? All in question. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, Tony?
And then the next one are two students that are brothers, or they're brothers, sisters, whatever. And it's students number 401765 and 401518 remain at the Castleton Village School.
Okay, any
Second.
second from Peter? Tony did the first, Peter did the second. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, thank you.
I have a clarification. The first one you mentioned wasn't in our packet.
Correct.
Right.
That's exactly
Just
right.
got it.
Just wanted to clarify
yesterday.
that.
Yep. All right, innovation report discussion. So everybody got the answers to the questions as part of your packet. So now's the time to ask clarifying questions, as the next step would be a vote on October 14th about how we're going to move forward. So, did anybody have any questions about the answers? Sounds weird, but go ahead.
I did want to say I did receive from yesterday a letter of intent from Castleton University to actually indicating their interest in the village school and moving forward with that project. So I do have that, which I can certainly send to you all to share, but.
Can you do that?
Yep.
Okay, all right. Anybody have any questions about answers? Tim?
The first one was my question,
Okay.
and I thought Peter had mentioned that there was a contingency on that reply that said that we would have two cafeterias and kitchens if you were still able to go ahead and renovate the high school and then come back at a later time to do a middle school.
Yep.
You didn't really articulate that in the answer, but that's what I took away from his response at the meeting.
Okay.
Yes.
So yes, you're right.
Well, it's a big detail, so,
Yeah.
okay. That was all.
Okay. Anybody else need any clarification on any of the answers or anything like that?
Sure.
Okay.
So this partnership with CU, Brooke, I mean, this letter of intent, I mean, does it have terms, years, dollars? I mean, what does this look like?
Doesn't have dollars. I can read it.
Yep, sure. Okay, dear Ms. Olson-Farrell, planning is underway to open an early childhood education center in 2 phases at Castleton University. Phase 1 calls for an on-campus facility to open on or before July 1st, 2020, in what is now the President's home. We anticipate enrollment growth on a gradual basis to reach capacity at around 40 to 45 children after a full year of operation. Knowing the shortage of high-quality and affordable childcare in the region, Phase 2 of the plan calls for an addition of a new facility in the coming years. This, of course, assumes the success of Phase 1 and the need to expand to a larger facility. The university is excited about the prospect of the Castleton Village School being available in the near future as a space for us to grow the program. The current plan would be to expand the early childhood education programs for older children to the Village School in Phase 2 and retain infant care in the existing facility on campus. There is also interest in expanding other academic and co-curricular programming in the facility if space is available. While we know there are many unknowns at this point and several details to figure out regarding the partnership and costs associated with occupying the building, the university remains very interested in working with the Slate Valley Unified School District to arrive at a mutually beneficial agreement for future use. So they're looking at a Phase 1 facility on campus to open on or before July 1st of next year, 2020, for 1 year, and then start looking at Phase 2 after that. So that's all, and that's from Karen Scalfaro. Dr. Scalfaro sent that.
I know this, we don't have the details yet, but I guess 2 general questions would be, number 1, is it correct for me to assume that this would be a revenue-producing engagement for our district? They would pay us some sort of
Yes.
lease?
Yes.
Okay. And then number 2, has this board, previous to my coming onto it, already decided that they want to pursue this? I mean, or can this board say, you know, we don't want to be their friend anymore, or I don't like early education in that facility, we'll pass? I mean, how does that work?
I think nobody's taken a vote as a board, but we've definitely spoken about it at the innovation committee level.
And they came and did a presentation.
To the board,
Yeah, Maurice and Karen to the board.
Last spring,
Yeah.
maybe?
Yep. Yep.
I guess, will it ever come to a point again where this board could say, yes, I'd like to go forward with this arrangement, or no, I'd rather not?
Yeah.
Use the space for something else?
Yeah, I don't think the whole innovation project in the middle school is contingent on whether or not this happens, so I don't want that to get confused with the bigger picture. I think they're separate decision points. Certainly, would it help offset the cost? Yes, but, you know, I think that's a separate decision point.
And we can't really make that decision either till we know if we're going to be doing a middle school.
Correct.
I'd agree with that, yeah.
When we will be
Correct.
unoccupying that school, because, you know, it all has to line up for them to use it, so.
Correct.
I don't think that, them using that's really something we need to, I mean, they want it so we can think about it, but till we know if we're doing a middle school, we can't really give them an answer.
Correct.
Yep.
Brooke, does that building revert back to Casson?
Castleton and Hubbardton would have the first right of refusal. It wouldn't just be Castleton.
Their union.
Correct.
But that's if we didn't use it for education.
And this board would have to vote to then close the school, and you'd have to have the majority of taxpayers in Hubbardton and Castleton vote that way as well.
Right,
And then they would have the first right of refusal on the property.
right.
So,
But the-
otherwise, this board can decide to educationally repurpose the building.
Right.
But Castleton University wouldn't come into that educational repurposing idea.
It could if it was still being used for some of our kids. It's still being used for educational purposes.
It's almost like if we decided to make it into an administrative building, still being used for educational purposes. Yep. Any other questions about that?
Not that, I have more, though.
So go for it.
I think Mike had asked this question, the last one on the first page, about the concept of the district middle school.
Yep.
Is there any documentation to those findings that there are no other buildings that would meet the criteria? How did that come to be? I mean, did Peter come up with architectural plans and cost estimates for making
I mean,
a
we
different
definitely,
school
we
the middle
talked about
school?
it. We also talked about, as part of the committee, we also talked about where the population masses were in the district. We did initially talk about, Benson, would it work here? Would it work at Castleton Village School? But did we do a complete study? No.
So those discussions aren't really documented with specifics and details and why not, and
There's minutes that alludes to that early on, but there's not,
I would say the direction of the committee wasn't focused on pursuing those others at the time. Because the benefits of the situation that we went forward with outweighed it.
And I think, when the committee developed the educational specifications, part of that was being close to the high school so that we could have, opportunities for kids to accelerate, to participate in other things, on the high school campus. And so if you were to put it in a different location, you wouldn't be meeting the educational specifications that were drafted by the community, the students, the staff. So I think the educational specifications drove a lot of the decision making up into that point.
I agree with Amy. I think we quickly decided that that was not our focus, was not to focus on our current buildings and what we could do to them. Yeah.
I think it also allows for better utilization of personnel, because you've got some teachers at the high school that aren't teaching a full slate that are licensed for grades 7 and 8, and if you can utilize them instead of hiring additional staff, it's a benefit.
Well, I think because of certification being 7 through 12, I think there's a way that you could share staff.
But if the middle school was at a different location, that becomes real hard to do.
Correct.
And I just had one other question, generally speaking, about what this discussion, what this vote is going to look like in 2 weeks' time. Are you going to have like a pre-drafted motion that someone's going to read, or, and you've already kind of done your head count beforehand, or are you going to consider different motions? I'd like to make an alternate motion in 2 weeks' time for discussion. How do you foresee this debate taking place?
So based on the conversation tonight, I don't think anybody's done any head counting. I don't have time for that, or figuring all that. I was basically waiting for tonight to kind of see what people had for more conversation. We definitely have the 5 options that were on the table that we know about from the Innovation Committee report. That's where I think we were looking at, picking one of those 5 options. And I was hoping tonight's discussion would put certain options off the table, like just updating code, or, you know what I mean, like getting those kind of those bottom ones off the table, and just deciding where we're headed within those 5. I was not thinking of an alternate motion, personally. So, go ahead, Amy.
Are we capable of narrowing that field down tonight prior to the next meeting?
I think that would be a smart idea. Yep. Yep. So that was kind of the thinking. And tonight I was hoping that people would ask questions or get resolution to questions, or maybe feel consensus from other board members about one or two of the options that we could then bring forward. So allowing some more conversation and just seeing where we kind of landed within there. That would allow us, like Amy said, to narrow. Yep.
I can tell you what I'm thinking.
Oh, well, just 1 second.
Why don't we
That's
start
good.
with,
That's
we
good.
can go all the way
Well,
around.
that's what I was going to ask. I mean, you don't have to say something, obviously, that's your prerogative, but if everybody was okay with that, I don't mind going around. Is everybody okay with that, just going around the table? Because you can always come back to you, too. You can say pass, right? Yes, and we can come back to you.
Binding.
Correct. Yeah, and this is all conversation, too, right? This isn't binding. But I kind of wish I had a whiteboard, but everybody remember the 5 choices, though? Everybody kind of have those?
No, I'm cheating.
Yeah. What?
Don't have all 5.
All
in
5,
my head,
okay.
so.
I would have
just
to
share
call
them?
up my email
I'm trying.
and get it.
Hang on, I just don't have the report in my.
So it's on page 4 of the report.
There's actually 6.
It's
Oh,
online.
thank you, 6.
I didn't bring it.
There's 5 options, and then add the Orwell stuff or
Right.
not as kind of
Right.
an à la carte add-on.
Yep. Mine's coming up.
See?
Which ones are which ones?
Mine is coming up.
Somewhere.
It's a big document. Oh, look. I'm on drive. I'm in my kid's account. I better not be on his drive. All right. You got it?
Could pass it
Gotta
down.
remember the page.
Everybody have it?
At the bottom.
You guys have a copy of the 5 options?
I don't know.
Rebecca's very,
Can we make a copy of this for
well,
everybody?
Rebecca's very organized. She has all the options.
Does anyone need it?
I'm good.
I have,
We need
but
more
I don't have
copies,
No basically.
because Casey's offered to make copies.
Yeah, make
be
just put the
helpful.
5 options on.
Just
Yeah.
the 5 options, though.
Number
Don't
4,
be,
page number 4.
Yeah,
As
just.
long as I just have that, I don't need a copy. I can just work off of that.
Might be handy to bring it tonight.
Look at that.
there it is.
And it was.
Okay.
And it was.
Okay, so I'll just review them as they're doing it, but, so option 1,
Well,
Right.
I mean,
right? Yeah, so Orwell is separate as an option, right, as an add-on.
Right.
Okay, so yes, there are 6 options, but there's really 5+ options, because you can't just do Orwell by itself. That would be, well, you guess you could, but
I mean,
highly
that's
not
another
recommended.
discussion, whether Orwell would be a separate.
Right.
A separate
No,
or
it would be
combined?
one Has to be bonded together.
Bonded together?
Yeah, it has to be bonded. So option 1 would be 8 million. And everybody understands what that means, addressing code and safety issues at the high school. So you're talking ADA compliance, tiles that make you trip, safety issues with maybe I'm making this up, windows, but safety and code issues, okay? 8 million. Option 2, 16 million would be obviously doing the code issues, plus addressing any infrastructure issues at the high school.
what structure?
Infrastructure, so then you're talking heating, plumbing, cooling, that kind of infrastructure things. Things in the kitchen that need updating, so infrastructure. Option 3, 28 million would be option 1 plus option 2, and renovating the existing facility, high school facility, to address the proposed educational specifications for a 21st century high school program.
And if
So
I can
that's-
just inject, in between 2 and 3 was the question answered there. I think when you step from 2 to 3 and then want to go back later to do the middle school, that's when you have some redundancy and need.
So in option 3, would it be possible under 28 million that whatever you did to renovate the existing facility, would it prepare it to, in the future, add on a middle school? Yeah. Basically is what you're saying. But I think we'd need to do the 28 million.
You would
I don't
have to
think
do
it's
the
between
28
2 and
million.
3. I think it's between 3 and 4.
Yes, it is.
So the 28 million means that you do all the code and safety, all the infrastructure, but you also get the high school up to snuff to where it need to be.
Oh, great, thank you.
Leaving parts of the high school ready to accept a middle school when it comes to construction talk. And I'm talking things, he threw out things like firewalls, or where you put doors, where you put exits and entrances, based on that 28 million, is what it would be. Option 4 is the 54 million. So that's 1, 2, and 3. And this is the one that talked about a separate middle school, where this middle school goes up and actually into the soccer field. Instead of all that shared space that we had where you could overlap things, it would be literally just having a door between the two facilities, nothing shared, all new middle school off the end. That's basically the difference between the two.
I thought that was option 5.
No, option 5 is an integrated middle school. That's where we share the gym, share a cafeteria, share a performance space.
Share a gym, but also they're constructing another gym.
Correct.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, so 2 gyms, but could be a shared facility.
But you're sharing
Yep.
a performance space.
And a
kitchen.
cafeteria.
Well, you're sharing a kitchen, but the
Kitchen.
eating spaces are
Eating,
different.
right.
But there is another option that we just got last week in between.
4 and 5?
So probably like 56 million, which has a better layout of
Okay.
the middle school
Okay.
piece.
Okay. And then on top of that is Orwell needing to happen as well. So I would think, no matter what we do, I guess the first thing we would need to decide is if we're going to do Orwell, yes or no, because we either do it or we don't. You can't roll Orwell into our regular budget. And even if we do the 8 million, you got to do Orwell.
Right. So do
So-
you want us to discuss the options for Orwell first?
I would think so. I think we just need to decide as a board, are we going to do Orwell in with it? I really don't have a choice no matter what we do. If we do nothing, we're still going to need something for Orwell. So, and those options are 1 million for code and safety. 3 million for code, safety, and infrastructure, and 6.5 million for code, safety, infrastructure, and a gym and a cafeteria addition.
And I don't think for Orwell or the high school, you have the option to do absolutely nothing. I mean, you have heating
Right.
systems that hopefully will make it through this winter.
Yep.
There's some work that needs to be done in both of those buildings.
So here's a question.
Yep.
If we decide to just do code, safety, and infrastructure, can the gym be added on later
In Orwell.
in Orwell?
Yeah, but it probably costs you more than 6.5 million. That's usually the unfortunate circumstance in these circumstances, is that once you start a construction project, going back and adding more construction, it's just gonna cost you more than doing it in the first place.
The other problem with Orwell is the gym cafeteria is where most of code and safety violations are. So-
Right.
Yeah.
So, can I ask a question?
Yep.
I don't know how to put this. So, we have 2 smaller schools, Orwell and Benson, right? And ideally, we'd like to keep them both open. But what is the chances of that? In my mind, ideally, we'd like to keep them both open. But what is the chances of that really happening? And if that is not a possibility, do we spend all of that money in Orwell when we have a gym here in Benson? Do you know what I'm asking?
I do.
Or, so do we just then take care of the code and safety violations and infrastructure repairs for now? Or do we really invest all of that money in Orwell at this point if we have 2 schools that we may not be able to support in the long run? Just because of population size.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I mean, I don't want to ask an unpopular question, and part of me really doesn't want little kids walking across in the middle of winter, having to go get their lunch in another building, but part of me doesn't want to have to spend all of that money either when we do have facilities that they could use?
Well, Orwell right now doesn't have a declining population, so.
No, it doesn't.
Doesn't have what?
Doesn't have a declining population.
Is there a population study that's been done recently in this area?
Yep,
Yep.
Orwell's
And so-
growing, Benson shrinking.
But there is a facility that they could use.
But this facility could not hold all of
kids.
Orwell's
Right.
kids and all of Benson's kids.
Right.
I
So-
think the middle school, it's all contingent on what you're
But if you
doing
take
with the middle school.
if you take the middle school students out, then they could probably hold all of the 1 through 6. Is that possible?
I don't know, I don't think
Pre-K,
so still.
pre-K through 6. If you're going to do it, you got to bring those pre-K.
Pre-K is going to Castleton University.
From Orwell?
No, we would still have our
I
own
mean,
program.
Not like
Yeah, we'd still have our own programs. They can't take them all.
middle school. You
They
think
can't, they're doing infant all the way through. They're not doing just,
I know it's an unpopular question, but I think it needs to be asked, and I don't necessarily want to ask the question, but I think we have to at least discuss it and say that we had the discussion.
okay. Anybody else? Amy?
I think it is a discussion that we have to have. However, we also have to keep in mind that in order to not use a school, it is going to require the community of that school to make that decision, not the board to repurpose or, I mean, repurpose, yes. To not use it, that's not really up to us. It's up to the community. But I do think we need to discuss options. I mean, yes, Peter's correct. Orwell's growing, Benson's shrinking. But we could restructure ourselves differently between the two of us to better utilize the buildings with the age groups that need those and share a little more
Yeah, so
than we
some-
currently are. And we haven't really discussed that as another option.
But I think a lot of this is contingent on the middle school.
But I think we need to look at a comprehensive plan, not look at each school as it's a silo, but how do we work together? What does
Which
this
is
look like?
what I'm proposing, is just, we need to look at it from a different lens, the Benson-Orwell relationship.
I agree.
And that could also go into the bus routes. How feasible would it be to share all of that when they do the audit?
Oh, yeah, yep. So, but if you bring that back to what we're talking about, the 5 options and Orwell Village School, if we still need to have those conversations, there are also some very pressing things that have to happen in our district that are going to require a bond. We can't get out of this for 8 million code and safety issues at the high school. So we need to have a conversation about what are we willing to spend right now. Yes, we need to have my opinion is, yes, we definitely need to have the conversation about in-district. How are we utilizing what we own right now? How are we working together? How are we best utilizing it? I also think we need to think of ourselves as in the county. Where do we fit in this county? Because not only is Benson shrinking, so is Poultney and West Rutland and Proctor and other districts close by to us. And we do have the opportunity, I think, in years to come, to become a larger entity in our half of the county. So I wouldn't want to make a decision that would also stunt us and put us in the position where people are leaving us because we're not meeting needs, which is what potentially is going to happen to a lot of schools around us in this county. So I want us to be a place that people want to come because they think their students' needs are going to be met. They see 21st century learning. They see things happening that I don't know about you guys and your family outside of our little county in Rutland, but my brothers who grew up here, they moved where they moved because of schools. They didn't move where they moved because of the grocery store. It was literally because of the education their kids were going to get in the place where their house is. They would buy a smaller house for the education. And I think we need to think like that. If we want to bring people to our part of the county, we need to think what's going to bring people to our part of the county. And it's one of those factors are schools. That's why people move. They'd rather commute an hour if they knew they had their kid in a good school. So I don't want to lose that either at the same time that we're having this conversation. Do we want to go around the room? People still have things. We got kind of do we want to decide Orwell? What we want to do in Orwell?
Go around the room and then that person can add.
For Orwell? Or for in general?
You can do both.
Both,
Okay.
and they can speak
All
to
right.
Orwell when it's their turn.
All right, Peter?
Well, I just have a question about the 16 million.
Yep.
Option 1 plus the addressing in your infrastructure. So would that count like remodeling, painting, and new flooring, and like redoing the school?
Yeah, but in its existing, like, configuration.
The 28 million would do it, setting it up so that eventually you could put a middle school within it?
Correct.
Potentially, yes,
But
yep.
we have so if you did the 16 million, then you want to go to the middle school, you could do it totally separate and it wouldn't interfere with that, am I correct?
You mean a separate building?
Yeah, because the separate middle school on the same site, there was a drawing of this middle school just beside it. It didn't use any of the
Well,
high school.
it's that drawing, it did connect
Well, yeah, it
still,
connected,
but yeah,
but you weren't sharing spaces.
right.
Correct. It took
you're
over
right,
it took
correct.
over the soccer field. It went
Right.
right into the soccer field.
Yeah.
So we could use we could do the 16 million and then later on, if we wanted to, do the middle school without having to spend a lot of money on the high
That's
school.
only if we agree that we would want a separate middle school.
Okay, that's what I was asking, because that's what I'm thinking. I think we should do the 16 million and the option 3 of Orwell. Because I'm afraid that if you want to do all of the middle school, whether you go with option 4 or 5, nobody, I talk to people, and I know there's people that want a middle school, but I also know most people aren't going to want a bond for $60 million. I think 28,
But the problem is if we do the lesser option, it's going to cost us more in the end. Adding later on is going to cost more.
I understand that.
So.
So wait till we get around, though. Wait till we get around. So go ahead, Peter.
I understand that if we just fix the high school, it's gonna cost us more to do the middle school later. But if we don't get it passed now, when's it gonna pass? How long are you willing to wait on the high school? How long are we waiting, they're gonna let, the gym in Orwell be the way it is? Because I don't think there's an appetite for a middle school that's gonna add 30 million to the cost.
Okay.
That's my opinion, and I really want to see the high school get fixed.
Okay.
And we can build a separate one later, which I know is a long shot, because once you've done one bond, it's gonna be hard to get another one. I can't see $60 million bond. Nobody I've talked to will support that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Tony?
I'm sort of along the lines of what Peter's thinking, but I'm more for option 3. And then probably option 2 for Orwell. I've talked with people too that 60 million, they went, you gotta be kidding, what are we getting? They don't understand the cost of building a school and adding to our schools, making our schools. They don't understand that our schools have, sort of been let go because of funding, not being able to fund. I'm not sure we could get a 64 million. That would be ideal. I would love to see that happen. But I don't think it'll happen.
Okay. All right, Mike?
Somewhat echoing what we've heard already. I think we have no choice but to do what's going to bring our buildings up to code, regardless of what that costs. Certainly on board with the district middle school. We've heard overwhelmingly that folks in the community support that. Haven't heard support for 60 million over 30 years. But I also don't know about the other half of the equation. This is what's going to cost. But what sort of dollars and cents can we put together for the other end with efficiencies, both intangible, but also, or tangible, but also the intangibles, that we may not be able to put dollars on, but add value to the 60 million that we're looking at. So it's an awfully gray answer because I don't have an answer yet.
You don't want to pick an option?
Pardon me?
You don't want to pick an option?
Not at this point, no.
Okay.
I don't know. I don't think I know enough to pick an option.
So, Mike, but what questions would you need to have answered? Are they questions that can be answered, or are they questions that can't be answered?
On the cost side, what implication would this have on our budget
Okay.
on an annual basis? Because we
Okay.
pass the budget annually. What would 60 million look at on a budget?
So that's
And what
in
would,
here.
say, 16 million look at?
Right.
So I thought,
So I thought that was in the innovation report.
It is.
Yes. How much each one of those would cost annually.
Yes. But there's the other part of that is, what are we going to gain through the efficiencies and decreasing portions of the budget?
Okay.
so I thought
And
we.
again, values tangible versus intangible.
So I mean, the intangibles, I think, are personal.
Right.
To some extent, right? What do you get out of it? I know my student's going to a new, safe, well-provided facility where they're going to have opportunities to, everybody has a different view on that, right? And what they think the intangibles are. What Amy thinks is great about a school might be different than what I think is great about a school, right? So I don't think you can put, that's going to be your personal feeling.
That's different for
right?
everyone. I understand that.
But when it comes to cost, that's in there.
And these are very conservative numbers because I did some other estimates the other day that would project greater savings than what is in the document. But I think right now,
So starting on page 46 is a discussion about kind of projecting what the taxpayer impact would be and some of the assumptions that are used in making those projections. And part of that was, the decrease in the cost for operating the school and estimated personnel savings. And as Brooke said, right now, it's very conservative, meaning there's likely more.
we just don't want to.
And then there are things that I'm certainly, are not dollars and cents, but again, we're being
But add value
conservative
at the same time.
at this point.
Yep. So that's, some of that's personal, right? Like I can't tell you what is intangible. That's but when it comes to the money, I mean.
And again, the way our funding system works, it's not just the taxpayers of these communities that are paying for this. It's the state,
Right, I mean,
across the state. It's not, you're paying for South Burlington's and Winooski's renovation.
But I think that's important that community understands that. I mean, when people are like, what are we getting for $58 million?
Hey, you're stealing my piece. Come on.
Right? Sorry. All right, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I think that's where I'm the most concerned about this is, we may feel as though we have community here. This whole unification is very new. Maybe it's not for us. We've been talking about it for a long time, but it is to my neighbor Fred, who's 80 years old. He didn't know this even happened. When I hear these folks talk, and I mention those numbers, even from folks that have kids in school, there is a brushback, like, whoa. And I feel like that brushback it's a trust issue. And I'm not saying that trust has been violated. I'm just saying I'm not sure that communication is coming across. And, I know we've had public forums, and I know we've had surveys, and lots of stuff has been done. I feel bad about the idea of dragging this on, but I'm questioning whether our communities are ready to see these numbers without something more tangible or a stronger community. And my fear would be that it would turn them off, and then we would get into year in, year out, bonds coming in and being shut down. And we know that this has happened in other communities around us. So I'm sorry to be so ambiguous in my approach, but I am concerned about that part. Obviously, I believe in that we need to progress 21st century learning, absolutely. And we have serious infrastructural problems. But between now and 2 months away, I don't know what we can do to really have a sense of where our communities are within this, as far as communication and an understanding of where we are as a district on all levels.
So are you saying do nothing?
No, I'm definitely not saying that
Okay.
in any way, shape, or form.
Okay. So can we kind of hear where you land?
I mean, On a
'Cause we have
personal
to.
level, I want to shoot for the moon, but I don't know if that's the wisest thing to do right now. So the safe route is to take the option 3, right?
That's the safest, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
What about Orwell? We didn't hear.
Yeah, and Orwell, what do you think about Orwell?
I know this isn't the mood of the day, but I like to hear from the folks from Orwell. I don't know it that well. Honestly, for me, it doesn't bother me that kids have to walk back and forth in the cold. I think it's good for them, but that's me. However, if the place has fallen down, and it is old, because it looks just like it did when I played basketball there in 1987, yeah, that's a problem.
1982.
So,
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you that as long as I've been on the board, there's been really no money put into that building.
yeah.
It needs a lot of work, and then you still got a 200-year-old building. No, the kids walking across the road, it doesn't bother the kids. I think it does create some safety issues. You've got too many entrances and everything.
Right.
But anybody who's been in that kitchen, you'd think twice about letting your dog eat in there.
Yeah.
And that I do have a major problem with. So no matter what, and you can't build a new kitchen in that building. I mean, it's just, there's not enough space. The way that you need stuff for structural support.
So the reality is that thing's on its last legs anyway. I mean, it's just coming down anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not going to make it another 20 years.
ADA compatible would
Yeah.
be almost totally
Yeah.
impossible.
Yeah, it's like, so you're going to put, to bring that up to code, like, and Peter's dealt with this more than I have, but if that's 90% of the $1 million, so you're putting 900,000 to bring it up to code, and it's still,
Right.
Not functional.
Yeah.
And that just seems like a total waste of money.
Yeah.
Something needs to be done, and I think, the other thing is, if you build a new cafeteria and gymnasium, you don't have to put a penny, or it minimizes the amount of money you're going to have to put in that building. I mean, you're going to have to put something because the heating system could go defunct next week or whatever, but you're going to save some money by not putting it into that building, by building a new addition on the school.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah,
too.
I echo a lot of what Glenn said. I mean, I coach kids in soccer, and my kids both go to Orwell, and the one major gripe that I've always had with Orwell is that facility is a ramshackle, disgusting mess. And I get it that it's been that way a long time, but when I know Orwell's, the kids always do really well, but then I go around to all the other schools, and that facility is embarrassing, and it's unsafe, and it's unhealthy, and it can't continue that way. Now, if there's no way to fix it, because it's clearly broke at this point, it just needs to be replaced. We talk a lot about, equity and so on and so forth, and, I go to, Mary Hogan, and they got a climbing gym, and, I'm not looking for a climbing gym, but I'm looking for, like, bathrooms that, aren't, like, maybe a step above truck stop, which is kind of where we're at right now. So, in terms of equity of giving, kids in Orwell the opportunity to succeed in athletics and to have a healthy and safe environment to eat, again, I don't mind them walking 20 yards to back and forth, although it's certainly not optimal. So I think from my perspective, certainly, Orwell's, it's gone to the point where it's, like Glenn said, you can't put a Band-Aid on it anymore. You just can't. Okay. And I wouldn't say that if I didn't really, truly mean it. If I thought there was a way to get away with like a $3 million option or a $1 million option, I'd be 100% for it. Because the people that I represent in Orwell, are not going to be interested in a $60 million bond. I wish they were, but I just don't think they are. And if I'm wrong, please come talk to me or Peter or Glenn and let us know. But there's got to be some basic level of upgrade. I think also that it's easier for people to digest smaller bites than larger bites. If we set the high school up for the 20th century learning, I guess this is option 3, with the opportunity to expand a middle school a little bit later, times change, populations change. I don't like doing things piecemeal, but I think that, you know, you eat an elephant one bite at a time, and I think that's sort of what we're confronted with right now. And you know, I mean, I think I'm on a little bit upscale where Peter is, but I don't think we can let Orwell go any longer. But I do think we need to upgrade the high school pretty significantly. So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Based on Cheryl's calculations of her
Can I add one thing?
Yep.
About the town hall, then we'll be done with it. I've been working on getting the town hall replaced, the gymnasium, whatever you want to call it, since I've been on the Orwell School Board. And we did do studies of it. People look at it to see about repairing it and bringing it up to code. And everybody that's looked at it more or less said it would take a lot of money, and getting it up to code would be really hard. I've been in the bottom of that thing, looked around in the crawl spaces, and it's really terrible. And you know, I had one guy tell me, well, if you remodel, you don't have to meet all the ADA requirements. But I don't think we want to go that route. We want to meet ADA requirements. You know, we have bathrooms on one level, the cafeteria here, the gym up here. Well, bathrooms, I can barely fit in. So I'm just, you know, we have looked at that. And the town, we got it so the town gave us $20,000 to look at building a new one. And we were in the middle of doing that when we got merged into Slate Valley. So I just want to remind you, that we have been looking at it for a while. It's not something we just came up with because we were being merged. We were trying to do it before. So I just let you all know that.
All right, Angela, you're up.
So I think we should go with option 5. I think that it's an opportunity to really put ourselves in a great place to move our whole district forward and do really the best thing for our kids. And I think that if we really make a concerted effort as a board to really explain everything that this project is going to do for our kids and what it really means, what that 60 million really means tax-wise, and really get out there and talk to people, that we should be able to explain what the vote is going to mean tax-wise to people, and how most of the people are not paying taxes, property taxes. It's not going to affect a lot of the people the way they think that it's going to affect them. I don't know, I've been on the Innovation Committee, and just a lot of the questions I think people have, I was skeptical at first and asked a lot of the same questions, and I've really kind of come on board and really think that this is really the best thing for our kids and the best thing for the district. And I really think it's the best thing for the community too, that we can really make this more of a way to bring all of our communities together, and really help keep kids in our system all the way through into the high school. I'm to the point where I was saying, well, why don't we add a pool and tennis courts and this, go for the, pie in the sky. I mean, really, because most of the state's really going to be helping us buy this all as well. Although 60 million sounds like a lot, in reality, I don't really think it's going to affect our taxes that much. And believe me, I pay a lot in taxes on my little piece of property in West Haven, but my couple hundred acres, and I don't really want to pay any more than I do already, but I also think that it's gonna, I think it's the best option.
And are you good with Orwell?
And Orwell, I think I would defer to the people from Orwell.
Patty?
So I did have one question before Peter started, I'm sorry, but when was the last bond approved?
2007 for Fairhaven Grade School,
Yeah, it's
right?
Fairhaven Grade School, it was, say.
Like 2000, I mean, it doesn't have to be exact, but I'm just
bond, and
thinking.
we only have a few more, about 8-9 years left. It's been a very long time.
So it's been 2007, so if I'm doing my math right, just about 13 years since a bond was passed for any of our schools. That's correct?
But I'm not sure we've put forth any.
I've never voted on a bond since
Not
I was.
in
No, I'm just saying, just in
Right.
general.
In
I mean,
general,
I'm not
that's-
specifying where it was or anything like
Right.
that.
That's
No.
it for bonds in the entire,
That's
yes.
it.
Right,
We
so,
don't have
so if you looked historically at many of our counties, there are some counties in which bonds are passed on a pretty regular basis. So
Yep.
that, it's a common thing every 5 years to have some upgrades or whatever that might look like in their infrastructure and in their schools. I think from the kids' standpoint, if you could ask the kids what they would want, they want to go to a school that is supported at least by option 3. I mean, I don't think that you can do anything that's less than option 3, because then you're not actually impacting education, which is what we're all about. If we're just fixing buildings, then you know what? That's not our job. Our job isn't to just fix buildings. I agree with safety, and I agree with all those things, and ADA compliance, and whatever you want to talk about, but we're really in the job of educating kiddos. Personally, I don't think, working currently in a middle school and having worked in middle schools and elementary schools, I don't like the concept of having both of them merged. I don't think 7th and 8th graders do well with 11th and 12th graders, and I would prefer that not happen. So I would go with, I guess it's option 4, right, is the one that's sitting.
But they wouldn't, it would be autonomous, they would be separate.
I get it. I still don't, I want a wall between them. I want a door there. I don't want them
There would be,
walking.
there would be.
I don't want them sharing that property.
They would still have a separate, but they would be able to use certain facilities, so they wouldn't have to.
I want them as separate as possible, so whichever option that is, I'm sorry. So I'm not sure exactly which option, whether it's 4 or 5, that keeps them as separate as possible. But I do agree with everything that everyone has said about the fact that if we're considering that this is a bond, that no one has voted on a bond like this in this area for a long time. So I think from an advertising standpoint, marketing standpoint, whatever you want to call it, I think that that's the most imperative piece, is to actually be able to say, if this is what you vote on, this is what other people in the state, if they had something similar, would also have to pay with the tax dollars that we're ponying up. So in other words, if someone in Montpelier is putting this similar building together, then your tax dollars will be paying for that. I'm not saying this as eloquently as I could, but
That's
basically.
what Burlington's doing right now.
Right, exactly. So your tax dollars are going to pay for the one in Montpelier, and you're going to pay for the one in Burlington, you're going to pay for the one in, Sunderland or wherever they're paying for them, but you're not paying for one here. And that, to me, is just not okay. Why would we not want the education for our kids that other people enjoy in our state? So I guess whichever one that is, and I would agree that depending upon what that looks like, then the Orwell building, I mean, I was on a school board back in the 1980s, and we were talking about that building as far as how it wasn't really livable and not a building we should be using for kids as a gym or a cafeteria. So obviously, I think that the population, regardless of middle school versus elementary school, the elementary school kids need to have a place to eat and whatnot, and I too don't care if they walk outside. I think they should walk outside. I'd be happy to put one so that the door, they have to kids continue to walk outside. But seriously, that environment is, needs to be fixed.
Thank you. Rebecca?
Can I ask a quick question?
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry if at
That's
some
okay.
point we covered this and I either missed it or forgot it. Have we looked hard at a middle school not at the high school, but proximate to the high school?
So So, proximate meaning not, that's what the kind of 54 million is, where maybe they share like one
You know,
door?
kinda- Well, no, like on a different site, like, almost like the way Middlebury's middle school is, it's near but not next to.
Yeah, we don't have enough field space to do that. Like, if we put it anywhere, we don't own any
Well, It
land.
doesn't have to be on the same piece of property.
Yeah, we'd have to find another piece of property,
don't
buy
own
another
land.
piece of property, new build. Yeah, it didn't seem feasible.
Okay, I just didn't know whether we'd covered that at all. Because, I mean, there is some, I'm, not to monopolize the discussion, but I mean, I grew up in a community where it was elementary school, and then it was middle school, and then middle school was a totally different place, and then it was high school was in a totally different place. And putting 7th and 8th graders together is, or 6th, 7th, and 8th, whichever, I think is a good idea. You know, I mean, my daughter's been with the same kids for all 8, 9 years of her education, and God bless her, she's a patient kid, and, you know, but it's, by the time you get to 7th, 8th grade, it's good to sort of start to mix it up a little bit, you know? The other thing I'm seeing is that, you know, the sports team issue that we're running into, you know, we got to get 11 kids on the field for soccer, where 2 schools, 2 grades, co-ed, and we got 12, 13 kids.
I know.
You know, and that's, you know, it's frustrating to see. We're shipping kids from Orwell to Castleton to play softball, and I mean, it's coming on us, and that we're going to need to address it. You know, I don't want anybody to think that by me suggesting that this option 3 one is the best option. I think it's the best of a series of choices that can move us forward. Because I do believe that a regional middle school is a good thing, and I know a lot of people disagree with me, but I think that's good, and I think we need to get there. I just don't know if we can take it in just one big jump. So I thank you for indulging my question.
Yep, not a problem. All right, Rebecca.
Having eaten in the Orwell cafeteria, yeah, it's horrible. It is the worst place in the world to go with more than one person, and it definitely needs to go. So for Orwell, I'm definitely option 3.
It's quaint.
I think we really need to invest in our education system and in our kids, and we need to shoot high. We can't just settle. We've been settling for too long, and that's why we are where we are with all of our buildings. So just settling with 28 and hoping and praying, I don't think it's getting it done, because we need to shoot high and encourage all of our towns to shoot high for our kids. If we want people to move to our towns, we need to have a school that they want to come to. They're not going to want to come to just 28. They're going to want to come for the full amount. So that's where I'm at. Shooting for the moon. If we get shot down, then settling. But shoot high and do everything we can to get there. And not just settle now and hope.
And the process, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a month, right? After you warn it, it's like you can vote a month later or 2 months later, or like, what's the time frame after
30 to 40 days.
30 to 40 days?
After
So
one.
say in March it goes down,
Wait 30 days. You warn
wait
it,
30
wait
days.
30 days for a
and
revote.
then revote. So you have about 30 couple days to revote.
Right, but you only can vote twice in a 12-month period on a similar bond issue.
Okay.
So if it goes down twice, even though you've readjusted some things and maybe taken some things off,
right,
you can't redo anything for a whole year.
In a calendar year. January.
Mine's similar.
Well, a year from the first
I
vote.
think it's 12 months.
12 months from the first vote.
Right.
March to
Mine's
March.
similar.
I don't know if it's the first or the second vote. We probably
Right.
have to get that clarified, but it's 12 months.
And similar bond meaning for the similar issues.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Rick?
I am on the Innovation Committee. When we started down this path, we talked about all kinds of stuff. We talked about closing schools, like we talked tonight, and I think that's a mistake as far as I'm concerned. Keeping Benson or Orwell open, I think they're too valuable to a community to have the school kept open. It's the lifeblood of the community, and I hate to see that happen anymore. Orwell, I think we ought to do the Orwell aspect of it. They're the school that is maintaining their size or growing, like Peter said, and we ought to give them or shoot for that anyways. I agree with Rebecca. I think that we're in competition in this county. We're in competition, especially Rutland High. Rutland High is drawing our kids away, and we lack that middle school aspect where all these kids get together and maybe develop those bonds at the middle school, and maybe we'll keep them at the high school at that point. I don't know which one. I thought when we started down this path, I thought we were going to try to utilize some of the high school, existing high school. And then we found out, I guess, that we couldn't utilize some of that because we need it for the educational purposes there. So now they're talking about an autonomous middle school. And the 54 million would give you that totally autonomous one with a new gym for middle school, but it also eats up a lot of extra space up there too, which would be the practice soccer field. Whether we can utilize some other fields there to accommodate soccer practices for the teams we have, plus if we have a middle school, we'll have 7th and 8th grade practice too. So I don't know if we can afford to do all that. The 58 million comes across because if we try to integrate into some of the existing building, we got to build all these firewalls between old and new. And they say that's what's going to cost. I don't know. But this is, that's the right, isn't that right, Brooke?
Yep.
That's what the
No, you're
problem
right.
is with
Yeah.
trying to integrate with,
And I think once the board decides on a direction, some of these pieces can be worked out. I mean, it might actually be less in cost. It depends on what you actually want in the end. I think just the decision point on moving forward with a middle school concept or not is really the big piece. And then, you know, there'll be a lot of work that needs to be done around, so what does that mean? What does that look like? And what's the ultimate cost? I mean, these are rough numbers on the high end. So hopefully they would be lower.
and the options wise, the option 3, to address some of what Peter said, option 3, I think is vital to our school, because if you go back on page 21, it tells you the educational specifications for high school renovations to address educational needs. And those are needs that we really need, which are included in option 3, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
And I think they're vital to us providing that education that our kids deserve at that point. So I'd like to shoot for the moon.
All right, Glenn.
I guess you all know my opinion on the Orwell side of things, so we'll leave that where that's at. Having had 2 kids who recently went through this high school, I personally feel that their whole educational outcome would have been better if there had been a union middle school. And I mean, I went to Otter Valley, 7th and 8th grade were there. They put all the 7th graders in one hall. I mean, I understand where people feel, but I think that it really does make a difference. So, I mean, I think that we really need to look toward whatever it takes for this union middle school. Anybody who knows me very well knows I don't like to throw money away. I mean, the numbers that were in the report, the big bond, I mean, it's going to hit me for over $1,000 a year in taxes. However, and really not getting any benefit for my kids, I still support that, because I think that the better we can educate our kids, the better off we're going to be down the road. I would have liked to have seen a couple of different options. One, what would it cost to just build a new junior high, high school building, whether it's on the site of the present Fairhaven High School or buy a piece of land, because anytime you start trying to fix old, it's more expensive than building totally new. You've got a building that is 60 years old that has not been maintained. I'd be surprised if you can fix the deferred maintenance for the 16 million. So I would have liked to have seen that as an option, and I still would like to see that as an option for the middle school. As Dave was alluding to, you can buy a 20-acre piece of land somewheres, and maybe you build the building, so it could end up being cheaper because you're not faced with constraints of building around a building that's already there. Unfortunately, those two weren't there, and you know, I had a couple people, and I know this one would be unpalatable, said, why aren't you looking in Pulteney at Green Mountain? You got a bunch of buildings there, and maybe it's cheaper to walk away from the high school altogether and buy a couple of those buildings. You certainly got better athletic facilities than what we've got in Fairhaven. They just auctioned off last week all of the stuff that was around there. I mean, and it's now owned by the U.S. government, so they're not going to want to own that very long. And yeah, it's a little bit longer bus ride for kids, but it's not that much longer. But those aren't options that I can vote on, so I guess like Rebecca and Rick, I mean, I would say you shoot for the moon. You may get shot down, but I look back to when I was in high school, and Rutland High School was down in the center of town. It was a hole in the wall. MSJ had just as many kids as Rutland High School. Rutland built a new high school, and it's kind of like a field of dreams. You build it, and they will come. And them building that new high school in Rutland pretty much put MSJ almost out of business. You know, they went from having graduating class sizes of 150 to graduating class sizes of 20. So I think that if you've got a facility where kids can be well educated in a safe manner, you're going to attract people. You're not going to lose them. And you know, to echo what Angela said, you know, and looking at that number, I mean, Orwell, 76% of the people receive property tax assistance. They pay based upon income. And when they're looking at it being under $100
39
for this bond, how can you vote no on that? You know, if you're 76% of the voting population, and for $39 a year, you're going to get a $60 million building and stuff. I wish I could do that in the stock market or something. I mean, that's a great deal.
Everybody's above 50%.
Yeah, so I guess I would, with what's on the table, I'd say we need to do a middle school, and we need to do the whole thing, and let's get it done, because it's just going to cost more as we go on.
Tara?
I'm kind of torn. I am all for, I would like to see a middle school. I would. I do look at the numbers, and I had notes here about the homestead rates, sitting here trying to figure out what the percentage of our towns did get homestead rights. I don't know if people are aware, but the town of Fairhaven has a bond vote of $6.5 million on November 5th.
For their town.
For their town, but that's still
Yeah.
how many taxpayers in voters in the town of Fairhaven that are going to be voting for $6.5 million bond to go hit our taxes as well. And then to add this, another vote to ask for more money. I'm not sure. So with that being said, I would like to see probably option 3. Keep going back to option 3. But I would also like to see option 3 for Orwell to be able to, they definitely need a cafeteria, a gym, they need more up in that neck of the woods.
So Fairhaven's 68%.
68%?
Yep.
Thank
Is
you.
it, Cheryl, is it true that if homeowners with household income of less than $47,000 don't pay anything?
Well, they get, I think it's kind of the, what is it called? Not stopgap, but there's another level, and they can get like a full rebate on their.
So for Fairhaven, there's 33% of the people get that. Yep, you're welcome. Go ahead, Tammy.
Yeah, so I guess I would think we should aim as high as we can. I mean, I'm new to the area. I think investing in the best school would attract more people. I guess I still have the outsider perspective. And I think from what I understand about just political campaigns in general, aiming high could create a lot more excitement than incremental and could potentially work. You can sometimes have a plan, and especially if the whole board gets behind it, I feel like the communication about it will be so important. And I don't have the best sense of, the audience response, but it sounds like the arguments are in place. They're just maybe not out there well enough that this makes sense. If this, if the state's coming in with all this help, that this makes sense and won't be costing people too much. I don't have a opinion on Orwell, except from what I've heard tonight, it certainly sounds like the needs are desperate. So I hope we can aim high and then figure out a communication plan where the board could talk about it in a way, and it sounds like the timeline is tight, that we could sell it and get the best outcome.
Great, thank you. Amy?
I have always supported district middle school. I've been on the school board for 10 years now, including many committees, the Innovation Committee, and I've always been on board for it, so I fully support moving forward with a middle school plan. I think option 5 is the way to go. I think we can always wait and find out what the voters say, readjust, and go back. I'm not scared to go once and have to go back. I think it needs to be done for the vitality and the future of our communities as a whole. We can't continue to just patch and make do, because we are losing out to our neighbors, and that is not going to stop if we just continue status quo. And I agree that Orwell needs to have work done, and that community needs to have that put into them as well.
Thank you. Tim?
All right, well, thanks for everyone's input. I've written down a few notes here of points that other people have made that I agree with. I'm going to be an option 2 guy. I really think that we just need to focus first on the necessities of our deferred maintenance. Dave, you made a good point. I think it's easier for people, the electorate, to digest this in smaller pieces. So again, I think we should focus on what's essential first and maybe come back for a middle school a few years later. Josh, you had a good point about trust. I do have concerns that if you go to the public with a $65 million number, it's going to scare a lot of people to the extent where they might not even trust our judgment anymore. So I do think there could be a break in trust. This idea, if they build it, they will. If we build it, they will come. I brought up this question with Peter before. I'm not so sure. I always thought that good middle class paying jobs and cost of living are what brings people to an area, maybe more so than education. And I just don't see where those types of jobs are available in our area. So I don't agree with the argument that people will suddenly come into our district. And then also this whole, who's paying for it? The amount of people who are paying based upon their income as opposed to their property tax values, and that's true, it's all true, but it's not true for me. And, you know, to Glenn's point, I'll be paying over $500 more in taxes per year, and I just don't think that that's something that I want to invest my money in right now. So I'm option 2, and then option 3 for Orwell.
So 2 things. I just want to remind everybody that anything under anything like 1, 2, and 3, you get no cost savings, right? Because we aren't doing anything with personnel. We aren't doing anything with moving kids or anything like that. So there is no cost savings to 28 million. Okay, I just want to put that out there kind of in your thinking.
Might cost you close to the same.
Right, so you're gonna still have the same number of personnel, kids in the same places, doing the same thing. So your budget might be bigger yearly with the 28 than with the higher one. So I'm just kind of trying to get you a little sense of how that works,
Yeah,
right?
but that's just your opinion. I mean, you could always say Benson goes to Orwell and Benson becomes something, and you realize savings that way. So there's always a counter to that argument. It's just speculation.
Yeah, but based on these numbers and what we know about what they would do, we are not saying right now with 28 million that we are moving anybody anywhere.
No.
But when we say 54 million, we are moving people somewhere. That's the divide, right? So no matter what, 50 million, 54 million, 56 million, 50 whatever million, we are moving students, we are lowering personnel. That we're saying that when we do that. When we say 28 million, we are not saying we're moving anybody. That's just the divide.
And we're taking the collaboration with Castleton off the table.
Right, so we do have another building. That's true too.
Julie, are you going to give your opinion, or are you?
No, because I don't vote. I mean, I think
can vote.
I think
What do you mean
everybody,
you don't vote?
I don't vote when I call for a vote.
Well, you're supposed to vote. If it's tied, you vote.
If it's tied, I
Yeah,
vote.
so you can
It's tied,
vote.
but- Okay, I could vote. Well, I'm a go for the gold. I think everybody already knew that. I don't think I hid that at all in my facial expressions, nor any of my comments. So I am a go for the gold. I believe it will draw people to this area. I think our kids deserve it. I think we can make something of ourselves in Western Rutland County. I see what's happening in all the other schools around due to my other job. I know what's going on in those schools, and I see us being a powerhouse in Western Rutland County if we decide to make this move. I think we will draw families, I think people will commute, and I think they will send their kids to our schools. And I'm a firm believer in that, and I have been for years, and I think this is an opportunity for us to just prove it and prove what I think can happen in our school district. So I don't think I hid that at all.
Can I just offer one other historical perspective,
Yep.
or historical statement, excuse me, no perspective, a historical statement. We spoke of middle schools significantly in the 1980s. A bond actually was created, and it didn't go through, so it didn't go to the taxpayers, but it was actually all written out, and the specs were done and all the rest of it, and also in the 1990s. So twice now, we have talked about doing this to the level that we're at right now, and I think in both of those situations, there was a lot of conversation about, you know what, let's do a little now, and then we'll kind of chunk it in the future, and it hasn't been chunked in the future. So I just want to throw that out there.
Yep. And we've been talking about middle school since I've been on the board too. I mean, we've been talking about it for years. I was on a middle school committee when I first joined Castleton board. There was a middle school committee to decide whether we wanted to create a middle school that went nowhere, so, yeah. Angela?
So is the straw vote, am I right, 7-7?
Oh, I don't know, I wasn't keeping track.
Wasn't keeping track.
Vote. If you don't vote until next
Well,
meeting.
there's no straw vote because we don't know 5 options.
I think 5.
And Trevor's not here.
For a middle school.
saying.
Mike didn't have a vote, Trevor's not here, so it's close. I mean, there's obviously room for it to
One
go
other-
either way in
That's
this-
what it
in a
shows.
couple of weeks.
Oh, I didn't put
So,
One other aspect that was brought up at the Innovation Committee, and they decided to go with was this 1- and 2-pod systems for educational purposes. The educators came back with us with wanting this two-pot system, which creates classes that are 13 or 15.
No, the 3-pod creates 2, 13.
2 and 3, was it?
Yeah, 2 and
Okay.
3.
Yeah, yep.
Whatever. 2 and 3-pod systems.
Yep.
The 2-pod system created classes that were 25, 24, 25. The 3-pod system created classes that were 14 or 15 in this middle school aspect, which, understanding the pod system, I guess I better than I did to start with, takes, a third, or half again as many teachers to do the 3-pod than the 2-pod. So your cost savings from bringing all the middle schools together wasn't going to be as big going with the 3-pod.
Right.
We settled on the 3-pod.
Settled on, we didn't really.
That's all these things are based on, 3 pods.
Well, the construction
Construction, but not
But
the
not the
operation.
personnel.
The savings in construction between a 2-pod and a 3-pod is $375,000. So the construction savings weren't that different because you need a certain amount of space per student regardless. So it really wasn't a significant savings in construction. So I think the 2-pod versus 3-pod in terms of personnel still has not been firmly
So that's got to be
decided.
determined.
And obviously, if you have a 2-pod, there's greater savings in terms of personnel.
Yeah.
Yep.
But how well is a 2-pod able to grow if our communities grow?
No, so we would
So-
build for a 3,
But operate it to.
Operate a 2,
right,
and that would give you,
Give you some space to grow.
right.
That's what I'm hoping for.
Yep.
The space to grow.
Yeah, that's what we had decided on.
and the class size for 2-pod would be 22 students.
22?
22.
22,
I thought we talked about 25.
yep.
Yep. And one thing I liked that Angela said that I just am really, I do anyways, but I think is important is whatever we do decide, that we all communicate. We all walk in very different parts of life and parts of our communities and parts of our schools. We have different kids' ages. We see different people. We have parents in the community and relatives in the community. And it would be our job to be out there, probably more than we like to be, talking about this, educating people about this, because that's where people hear it. They do watch PEG TV. I do know that. People do watch PEG TV. But the main place that people hear it is when my dad goes to the mobile and gets a cup of coffee every morning at 7:30 with his 7 buddies. That's where they talk about, am I going to do a $60 million bond? So if I show up and get coffee, maybe I can have a conversation with them. It's those type things I think that's going to make kind of this either happen or potentially not happen, is us and our ability to communicate where we're at as a board. So I think that's important, Angela, is to get out there and really communicate with our constituents about what we're talking about and what we're doing, despite who pays or who doesn't pay. I think it's important for everybody to understand. So let's see. Does everybody feel like they've had their questions answered and been able to say what they need to say? Okay. So obviously between now and, yep, go ahead, Dave.
I'd just like to say one thing.
Yep.
That's just on behalf of the folks in Orwell. I can't tell you how much I appreciate the fact that all of you folks from all these different communities are willing to sort of put your money where your mouth is in terms of helping Orwell's kids out. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that, so thank you.
Welcome. Welcome. So obviously between now and then, if you have any questions, you can call Brooke. You can call anybody else on the board and have a conversation. Do not congregate in more than a certain number, please, at any time. We will be in
10.
trouble. 10. No, 10 of us may get together, all right? But we can talk on the sidelines and share and, communicate. If people have questions, please, Cheryl, I'm sure will answer questions if people have questions, more questions about how it breaks down for taxes and stuff. So please don't be afraid to ask so that you have the right information when you are out there talking to the public. But we will have I'm thinking, looking at, I don't think we need to, do we need to walk through every single vote next meeting and say anybody
I think the general question, because you're not voting on a warning, I
Right.
think it is,
Do
do
we
you
want
want
to
to move forward with the middle school piece?
and option number 3 with Orwell would probably be the 2.
Yeah.
questions.
Right, because I think the differences between options 4 and 5, and like I said, our architect just gave us another option. I think, that can be figured out in the next couple of months if the intent is to move ahead with the middle school.
How that looks, we're not quite sure yet. And the prices were, as we always knew,
They're all
conservative.
within that
Right.
range.
Yeah.
And then I think, we had discussed having the March vote, but there are reasons that you may want to have an April or May vote as
Yep,
well.
to maybe spread it
So-
out. Yep.
And sometimes it's difficult to combine a bond vote with your annual budget meeting as well. So, I think those are things, there's nothing
That
to
we
say
can
that
talk
you
about
couldn't
after.
have April or May or, push it out. But I think, and the intent would be for us to develop a communication plan, whatever option folks choose. And I lost my train of thought. That's okay.
So I think, just so you guys
Yeah.
know, on October 14th, it's going to be about middle school, yes or no. That's kind of the dividing line. And Orwell option, nothing or 3, I think. I'm just kidding.
Because I think if
So.
it's no middle school, then you can decide as an option 3, 2, or 1.
Yep.
But I think before we draft a communication plan, we need to know what we're communicating. And I think that's been a little bit of the struggle.
Yep.
Not getting bad information out there.
Yep. So, any questions on that, Cheryl?
I'm going to have one more item before you move off this topic.
Oh, before we move off
Yes.
the innovation report
The-
discussion. Oh, yeah, this. All right, do you want to explain it?
I can, if you're ready.
Yeah,
for that.
are we ready to move on to Cheryl? Cheryl has a document she'd like to explain to us about bonds in general, for how we work with bonds as a school board.
So Brooke and I spent, I don't know, a half hour, 45 minutes on the phone with Paul Giuliani, and he's an attorney in the state of Vermont. He works with the bond bank, and he's kind of I think he's one of the most, he's sort of the go-to for most school districts that are looking at bonds in terms of the procedures that you need to follow that are set by federal law and state law, because there are a combination of laws that need to be followed. And Brooke and I just wanted to talk with him so we start to understand clearly some of the things that we would need to do in terms of a warning and steps and, how it needs to be formulated and that kind of thing. But one of the things that he did point out to us was, and that he recommended that we do, is that the board pass a declaration, we'll pass it around, declaration of official intent of the Slate Valley Unified Union School District to reimburse certain expenditures from proceeds of indebtedness. And what this does is it allows, if you pass this declaration, it doesn't say you're going to necessarily do anything at all. All it says that if you do decide to go forward with a bond, you would be able to use the bond proceeds to reimburse the school district 60 days in arrears from this date, if you do it tonight, and 3 years in advance up until the time you actually did a bond. So what it does, there are costs that you're allowed to include when you do a bond. So it's, it's attorney's fees and other professional fees, which are
So we can charge the
architect
bond.
fees. So it allows the district to include all those costs to the extent they fall within the dates in the cost of the bond. It doesn't mean you're going to necessarily do a bond. It just says that if you do, you can use the bond proceeds to reimburse for certain expenditures that you do.
Anybody have any questions about that?
It's basically like financing your closing costs.
Right. And so you have to do this in a formal way in order to be able to do that. And it's this declaration that does that.
So do I need to make a motion?
Yeah, so we need a motion to accept this, and then Tara would sign it for us as clerk.
I'll make the motion.
Rebecca?
Second.
Okay, who made the motion?
I did.
Oh, Angela, and Rebecca seconded. Any other discussion or questions? All in favor, please say, oh, go ahead.
Where did you come up with the figure, 65 million?
We just added the 58 plus the Orwell project. Just get the high,
Not to exceed.
not to exceed the high end.
I thought it was option 2, 16 million, and then an approximately 40 million in legal fees. I read that, I read that wrong then.
It's just going on the high end of
Yeah.
everything. Yep.
Okay, any other questions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Opposed?
Did you get that, Bonnie? Tim opposed over there. All right. Motion passes, and we are on to principals report. Anybody have any questions about the principals report? No, but thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. Anybody? No? Everybody good? You guys have anything you'd like to say about your principal's report? Excellent.
Say, swing by the high school, the halls look amazing. The kids came in over the weekend, spent hours decorating within fire code. And it just looks amazing.
Oh, because it's Slate-erbration week.
Celebration.
Today was red, white, and blue day? No, am I wrong?
Yes.
Okay, red, white, and blue day. Yes, I had it sound red, white, and blue. So, gotcha. All right. Anybody else? Any other principal comments? No? All right, thank you all for coming. Appreciate it. All right, other business. I know we had some others. I'm gonna do.
That was in the,
Oh, yeah, the resignation was in the second attachment that came.
yes.
To everybody, did everybody get that? Yes? Okay.
Yes.
So, I'm gonna read it.
Didn't we already accept this?
What?
Didn't we already accept this?
Did we?
No,
No?
no.
There's another
Not
one.
this- Not this person. She just wrote it September 24th. All right, dear Brooke and members of the school board, I first walked through the doors of Castleton Elementary School as a substitute in 1983. It was a friendly, welcoming, child-centered school. I knew in my heart that this is where I wanted to teach. After being hired as a first-grade teacher in 1986, my experiences were so positive with the children, other teachers, and community members that I decided to move to Castleton when my own son was ready to start kindergarten. Over the years, I've taught many different grades and can honestly say I've thoroughly enjoyed my time at this school. Since 2019-2020 is the last year teachers who are grandfathered can access the early retirement buyout incentive for Castleton. The time has come for me to submit my letter of retirement. This will take effect beginning June 30th, so the end of this year, and she then quotes the buyout agreement in her resignation letter. I have truly loved working with the children and the families of this community, as well as my colleagues throughout the district. Castleton will always hold a special place in my heart. Sincerely, Bonnie Condit, Grade 3, Castleton Elementary School. So I need a motion to accept.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Excellent, so
did the second,
Josh did, yep. Any comments?
Do you let her know, Brooke, that we accept it?
Yes,
I was
they
just
get a
curious who
letter.
let, or if you let her know.
No.
You they get a letter.
Yep.
Yep.
they get a letter.
And you did write retirement, right? Not resignation. There's a
Well,
big
retirement.
difference.
Yeah, retirement.
Yeah,
Yep.
it's retirement.
Yep, retirement. All right, any other?
Dollars.
Okay,
Can I ask-
yes.
So, in her, quoting the buyout, section B,
Yep.
is that 100% or is that the 80-20 split on the single payer? 'Cause it says full,
Per contract, I'm gonna say, or no?
It's per the contract, so
Okay.
I'd have to grab the contract right now and look.
it says fully paid by the district.
Yes, it does.
No, these buyouts, they go
Yeah, I
for,
think it is, but
80-20?
no, I think it's full.
I do too, I think it's a Castleton.
It was a
I think it's an
Catholic.
old, it's a holdover. It's a,
Yep, I think so
Brooke,
too.
these buyouts are ongoing all the time?
not necessar, I mean, there's different versions. This was a grandfathered one when the contract language was merged
Oh,
years
it's
ago.
all in the contract.
Yep, this is the last year that buyout is
Available.
and it was only to a handful of folks that work in Castleton.
Good question. Anybody else? Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. And Opposed? Thank you, Bonnie Condit, for everything. We hope to see your face around still. There's other business, right? Tim, that's right, other. You had the other for the superintendent evaluation.
Yeah, so again, Sue Seglowski had contacted me saying that she has summarized the results of all the feedback and evaluations that have been filled out regarding Brooke and her performance, that she wants to meet with the evaluation committee. Who's on that committee? Raise your hand. So the half dozen of us.
Perfect, 6 towns, 6 people.
So basically, she wants to have a meeting. She anticipates the meeting taking about an hour. It would not include Brooke. She would go over the summary. We could ask questions, et cetera, et cetera. And then I think it's during the same meeting, after we've had a chance to discuss it without Brooke, then we call Brooke in. We can discuss it with Brooke. She can ask questions back and forth, et cetera. And then we start a goal-setting process at that point. We help Brooke develop some goals. So certainly the hard part is finding a time when we can have this meeting. In the past, I think we found it easier to have it in conjunction with the regularly scheduled board meeting in place of a committee meeting. I hope we can do that again. So whether that happens on the October 14th meeting or later on, I gotta let Sue know.
So the hardest part is we are also in finance crunch time because we have to start doing all the budget stuff. So we have finance meetings before every board meeting from now until.
And we have policy before the
January, yeah. So.
Plus, it sounds like you need a couple of hours then, right?
Yeah.
So it probably won't work up against a board meeting.
So.
I don't know how urgent this is. I mean,
Well, I think it's kind of urgent for Brooke. I think she'd like to have it, be able to set her goals and kind of be able to move forward. It might, you know what I mean? I think that's important for her, since she's never had a formal evaluation before. It'd be nice to have it, have her goals, and be able to move forward. I think it's important for her. You could do, I don't know if you do doodle polls, Tim, you could do a doodle poll to everybody and see what day and time is best.
I don't like to do that because
No.
everyone's busy and I'm not gonna.
They take 2
What
seconds.
about the 16th? I mean, typically we try to have meetings
How about
on Monday and
How about an
Wednesdays.
off Monday?
Or the we could maybe do the 21st.
You know what I mean? Like an alternate Monday,
Okay.
something like that.
Let me send out an email to those on the committee with a couple dates, and we'll try to circle in on something. I just would appreciate a timely response to your to my questions, so I can get back to Sue.
Yep, sounds good. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
All right, is that all the others? Felt like there was another other. You don't have any others? All right. Do we have an executive session? No, we're starting them next month. Thank you for asking. Do we have any executive session needs?
No.
No,
I
no
don't.
executive session needs. All right, agenda building. So we have,
We have the vote.
yep. We have a present, where are we?
We have a presentation at the high school.
High school, okay. Anything else anybody can think of?
We'll have a finance committee report.
Will they be rescheduling the building and grounds meetings or just canceling altogether? You had said that they're taking place as finance instead.
No, building and grounds will be the 28th.
They'll still meet.
Yeah, yeah.
She kind of implied it was.
Yeah.
Oh, no, sorry.
No, finance is every other.
Okay.
Yeah, we need them for finance. I gotta make some, yeah.
Yeah,
Was
so they'll
confused
be
by
meeting
your
the
statement.
20th.
They'll
Sorry.
be coming to both,
No, I'm not both.
so, okay. All right, I think that's it. All right. All right, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Wow, guys, 8:25. Woo, woo. Huh?